The duo of National Chairman of the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, and National Secretary, Senator Iyola Omishore, have resigned from their positions ahead of today's National Working Committee meeting of the party, allegedly on the orders of President Bola Tinubu. Their resignation would be formally announced today at the NWC meeting. This might have deepened the internal crisis plaguing APC, as the fate of the duo would be further sealed at the National Executive Committee meeting scheduled to hold on July 19, where their resignation would be accepted and during which a midterm elective convention of the party would be proposed to fill current vacancies. Adamu had fixed the NWC meeting on July 17, preparatory to the July 18 and 19 caucus and NEC meetings, respectively. It was expected that the NWC would present the party's financial report and also seek approval for those nominated as members of the APC National Advisory Council, NAC. But Adamu would no longer get a chance to preside over the meeting, as his resignation and that of Omishore are no longer in the realm of speculation. Also, President Bola Tinubu warns against nullifying Nigeria's February 25th election. He says doing so on account of the fact that he did not score 25% of lawful votes cast during the election in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, could lead to absurdity, chaos, and anarchy. In his final written address, the All Progressives Congress Party and Tinubu urged the Presidential Election Petition Court to dismiss the petition filed against his electoral victory by the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. Tinubu slams Obi's petition as frivolous and crass abuse of court processes. He says the People's Democratic Party presidential candidate's petition is without form or substance, characterized by repetitions, contradictions, and confusion. Rufai, good to see you. Two stories for us this morning.
Two stories, yeah. Let's start. If you were to dial back a couple of weeks ago, I think I said it on this table. I think I said it that this Eregele, what it means is it's a rough kind of play that Adamu is playing, will backfire and they will push him out. And it was crystal clear. Because I saw it, I wasn't mincing words when I said it. And I knew it was going to happen. Because what happens pretty much, and I think everywhere, even presidential democracy, not only in Nigeria, even in America, is that yes, you have a leader of a party. But once the executive president emerges, he becomes the leader of the party. He has the authority of the party. There are other leaders of the party. There's a chairman of the Democratic Party in America. There's a chairman of the Republican Party. But once the president emerged, he becomes the leader of the party. And there's nothing different in the case of Nigeria. Once I saw the brickbat between Mr. Adamu and President Tinubu, I knew he was in for it. The reports say that allegedly the president told some governors that we must get him out. And based on that pressure, he resigned. I am not surprised it happened. Also, Mr. Adamu had come up many times and said, I didn't support you initially, but now I worked with you. It's quite very difficult to say that in a Nigeria where sycophancy is the order of the day. An average Nigerian politician wants a band of sycophants around him. An average Nigerian politician wants a band of people that we call him kabiosi. What it means is nobody can challenge your authority. So if the party chairman of the party said, oh, I didn't support you initially, then there's a problem. And Adamu also did show it when they were about to pick principal members of the House, negating what President Tinubu had concluded with the lawmakers. So I knew. In fact, I'm surprised that Adamu had survived up to this point. Because we know the order of the day in Nigerian politics. But the APC said they will fix their problem internally. Yeah, they should come around and fix their problem. I don't really see any big challenge coming out of this to the supremacy of President Bola Tinubu within the party. But I'm sure Adamu has learned his lesson. I'm sure probably he knew on the path he was going before, because he's an experienced politician too in this country. So that's about that.
25%.
Second story, about 25%. So, you see, the way we carry things, I think those are just the depositions of his lawyers. Because we've put that out there as being hysterical. No, and nobody has the right to be able to gag the judiciary. It is the judiciary that will make the decision. And that's why the eye of the world is on the judiciary. A lot of people have interpreted the 25% in various ways, but the truth is, it is the judiciary that will determine how it's going to interpret the 25%. But what will fall on the judiciary now is to do what is right. One, in the sight of God. Two, in the sight of the law. So once the judiciary can do that and bring that level of accountability, but other things about, they were contrary repetition, that's his final case. Those are the final depositions of President Tinubu's lawyer at the Presidential Election Tribunal. Let's see how the judiciary rule. And I don't think any decision will cause anarchy.
Senator Abdullahi Adamu, chairman of the party, apparently had this coming, because there have been many divisions within the party, even before the primaries, and now, the chickens have come home to roost. Now, the moment he said he supported Ahmad Lawan and didn't support President Tinubu, and that it fell within the purview of his rights to choose as he deemed fit, but that he led the party to victory, and that he should be commended for leading the party to victory in the 2023 general elections. That was already clearly an indication, that he himself knew that he was having issues. And he said rather than being vilified, he should be praised. But clearly, he didn't have the full support of members of the party, particularly members of the National Working Committee and allies of President Tinubu, who were bound, of course, to react against any form of disloyalty. Okay, there is also the issue about accounts, the audited 2022 accounts of the party. Many members of the National Working Committee had complained that, look, certain things are not right in these audited accounts that the chairman must account for. Whether it's an allegation or not, well, obviously he has not been given the opportunity to defend himself. So what the reports say is that the sins of Abdullahi Adamu as chairman of the APC are too many, and that he was bound to answer for it, and that he had been approached by the allies of the president that, look, it's better you step down so that you don't go to the National Caucus and National Working Committee meeting and then you get embarrassed by getting removed from the position. Well, the president is the leader of the party, there's no doubt. We've seen the relationship between party chairman and the president over the years, under the PDP and also under President Buhari. You hold that position, really, at the pleasure of others, and the most principal person being, the president himself. So it's not as if it's a lifetime posting. Chairmen of parties come and go. Now, another issue to be noted is that, yes, Senator Abdullahi Adamu started his career with the PDP, originally MPN. Then, from 1999, PDP became governor in Nasarawa State. But in the last dispensation, he was more on the side of the CPC wing of the party. You will recall that the APC is an amalgam of different political orientations. When the CPC was the dominant party, because their leader was president, on the platform of the APC, they had sway. Now the ACN, the Action Congress of Nigeria, and Southwest allies of the current president, they are right in the forefront. And they are bound to consolidate their hold on power without necessarily making it so open that they are trying to edge other partners in that amalgamation sideways. So this is what has happened. But it will be interesting to see how the APC manages internal democracy, because internal democracy is important. There may be cracks in the party. Politicians will tell you, well, politicians always disagree to agree. And I'm sure that both Omishore and Abdullahi Adamu, being experienced politicians, they will know that, well, this comes, by the way. They probably will be compensated with other things. We'll watch out for that. Now, as for the case in court, yes, Presidential Election Tribunal, on July 5, after the petitioners closed their defense and called their witnesses, Atiku Abubakar and the PDP called about 27 witnesses. the Labour Party and Mr. P2B called about 13 witnesses. So Justice Samani and others on that tribunal gave 10 days within which, the APC and President Tinubu should respond to the issues. And what has happened before the tribunal is the APC and President Tinubu presenting through Wole Olanipekun SAN, their lead counsel, their written address. And what Olanipekun SAN did in that written address is just to respond to all the issues, the prayers of the petitioners. The petitioners were asking, for example, that Section 134, sub 2B, should be interpreted by the tribunal disjunctively, conjunctively, but disjunctively. But Wole Olanipekun is saying no. That's not the intention of the legislature, the framers of the law. The framers of the law did not say you have to get 25% from the FCT. So he has this response to that. So it's up to the tribunal to decide one way or the other. And he quoted Section 299, which says, the FCT should be treated as if it's a state. Okay? He quoted Section 3 sub 6, which listed all the states, and the side note to that Section 3 sub 6. And then, of course, Section 66 of the Electoral Act. Now, these are the responses before the tribunal to consider. 2, he said the issue about Tinubu having been asked to return $460,000 by a U.S. district court, that is of no issue, because in fact that particular ruling was not registered under the law here in Nigeria. And that secondly, that ruling being referred to has no reference to a fine. So which would mean that his client, was not in any way convicted in any U.S. district court. Number 3, he questioned the credibility of all the about 40 witnesses, called by the petitioners, and said many of those petitioners had no point. They should be disregarded. He raised the issue about electronic transmission. He said, look, the law says there is manual transmission. So you can't base everything on IREV and BVAS, and that generally the petitioners were bringing up issues that are alien to the electoral laws of Nigeria. It's not as if they were questioning the credibility of the process, which they themselves admit, and that in the eyes of the law, there is substantial compliance, with the electoral process, and that to that extent, the petitions by both Mr. P2B and Waziri Atiku Abubakar and other parties to their petitions should be dismissed as an abuse of, crass abuse of court process, he says, and as something that is vexatious. And that there are prayers that the election should be nullified on the basis of their interpretation of Section 134(2), should be disregarded because that is unknown to law. So there will be interesting outcomes by the time the tribunal rules on all of these matters. So before the tribunal now, all the parties have presented their cases. It's for the tribunal to declare. But I see the newspapers, played up the thing about anarchy and all that. But when you read that portion of the written address, it's not as if, the counsel to APC and Tinubu, it's not as if they are threatening. They are just saying, look, you have to interpret the law as in line with the intention of the lawmaker and not import what is not in the law to it. So it's a battle of wits among lawyers. Let their lordships decide. And then, of course, this is not the end of the process. When their lordships decide, the matter can go to the apex court again. And, it just takes us back to the same point about, look, why don't we determine all these petitions before inauguration? That will not give too many people anxiety, and there will be certainty. Look at the momentum that the government has generated. And I keep saying that the apex court of Nigeria is a policy court. And that was what Olanipekun SAN was insinuating, saying that if you look at a plethora of cases, Abraham Adesanya versus President of the Federal Republic, Awolowo versus Shagari, Buhari's case too, the court is not there to cause chaos or anarchy. That's the subtext of what he was saying, that the purpose of the court is to promote peace. But okay, don't let's jump ahead of their lordships. We'll see, how this is resolved.
Well, thank you very much. Just moving, I'll touch on the first story very quickly, and that is with regards to the resignation of the chairman of the APC and the secretary of the APC, based, as has been said, allegedly on the president's orders. I believe that the chairman of the APC, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, signed his resignation letter when he made the statement that he didn't support, he wasn't in support of the president, and he had actually backed another candidate to emerge as the presidential candidate of the APC. I believe at that time he had thrown his cards in and he was ready for the consequences. Don't forget that following that, after the announcement of the principal officers of the House, he had also come out too, despite the fact that that announcement was said to have gotten the backing and support of the president. He'd come out to say that, well, he hadn't heard anything about it and the National Working Committee weren't involved in that particular selection, before he had then been asked to, come into Aso Villa to see the president, and after that meeting saying that all was well. At that point, there were already speculations as to the fact that all wasn't well in the relationship between the chairman of the APC and the leader of the APC, who is the president. Now, in terms of his exit and what that might portend in terms of the state of the party, right before elections, there had been speculations and talks about the fact that even though the APC had presented a united front, a front that all was well, all wasn't really well internally in the party. Despite that fact, they were able to still emerge, as winners in the presidential elections, even though the cases and the matter is still in court as to what the end result of that would be. But it must be said that this decision, and perhaps referring to what Dr. Bati had said in terms of the now the CPC and the ACN faction, and perhaps there might now be people who have factions within the party. So people who are traditionally from the ACN backing the president and working with the president, and those who were from the CPC backing, whoever is leading that faction from the north especially, and working perhaps against the president. But it must be said that as the leaders of the party, a number of the APC members would be unwilling, would be loath to speak against him or to work against him, because they also would want to ensure that their interests are protected. After all, at the end of the day, when it comes to politics, particularly in this part of the world, interests do matter. Now, with regards to the petition, the presidential petition court, we have seen that play out in the past few weeks. An interesting outlook, despite the fact that a live transmission of the proceedings was not allowed or not permitted by the courts. Still, thanks to new media, we have seen quite detailed reports of what has ensued in the courts. And has been said, this headline around chaos, anarchy, absurdity by the responders would suggest that this is what they are pushing for. We must remember that even before the elections, this conversation had been had. It had even torn the opinions of lawyers, of SANs who had argued the fact as to disjunctive or conjunctive, what would the interpretation of that be? But again, as has been said, all eyes on the judiciary. What Nigerians are looking forward to is that the judiciary, yes, in the promotion of peace, would work in the interest of fairness and equity, and in the interest of Nigerians. So despite the arguments put forward by responders or petitioners, it is important to understand that at the end of the day, they say that the judiciary or the courts or the law is the last resort of the common man in Nigeria. We hope that this will play out at the end of the day. What Nigerians are looking forward to is fairness, equity,